Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for being on the other side. My name is Raul. I'm the chief advocate at ReferralCandy, and with me today is my friend Doron. Doron Feder. He's the head of growth at AfterShip. Doron, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good, Raul. It's great to meet you. Great to be here. And hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. For those of you who are not familiar with myself or Referral Candy, just very briefly, we are an app that allows e-commerce brands to set up and run customer referral programs. And Doron, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and
Mhm.
AfterShip as well?
Sure, sure. So as to myself, I'm the one. I'm the head of growth at AfterShip and Automizely. AfterShip is actually the flagship product of a larger brand called Automizely, and I'm responsible for everything growth related and specific partnerships. Um, And as for AfterShip, so AfterShip is an all-in-one order tracking tool that helps brands of all sizes with managing and automating everything that has to do with tracking their orders, right? So we're talking about integrations with other carriers, sending order status updates, building beautiful tracking pages, etc., etc.
Sounds good. So as you could probably imagine by now, so we're talking about referrals, talking about shipping. So we're talking about basically post-purchase, right? We're this is what we're going to focus on today. I mean, the titles of this webinar is to how to monetize your post-purchase user experience on your online store. So that's what we're going to be covering today. And so I think that one particular area that we can get started on, because I think it's a really hot topic of something that's happened in the past year or so. It's how customer acquisition costs have skyrocketed in the past few months, and they've actually been going kind of up and down during 2020, kind of depending on how the pandemic was evolving. But there's a lot more competition in the space now. Pretty much every single industry or every single e-commerce store from whatever industry they were on, now they have a lot more competition that they did just a few months before. And so there's this debate now on whether companies should focus more on acquisition versus retention. Obviously, both of them are important, but when it comes about setting up your own, companies are right now kind of facing this dilemma. What are your thoughts on that, Doran?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great point. And obviously, we are here today to speak highly for investing more in retention. Obviously, acquisition is I would say equally important, but retention has a lot of great opportunities. I mean, if you consider the fact that, for example, on-site conversion rate is extremely lower for acquisition versus retention, you just get a better understanding of how much potential retention has, right? And for I would say just less effort, you get much more revenue. And I think that's something that is very important to remember when you allocate your resources into, at the end of the day, allocating more and more revenue for your store and eventually wanting to grow your brand. And besides that, we can also speak about the importance of customer satisfaction being a key factor for I would say esoteric nowadays measures in the user journey, which is upselling and creating repeat purchases.
Absolutely. Customer satisfaction, that's just something that I typically like to talk about, because I think that's an umbrella that basically protects everything that's underneath that, in the sense that
Mm-hmm.
unless you have customer satisfaction, unless you're able to achieve customer satisfaction, any other marketing activity that you may launch on the side, it's not going to work as well if your customers are not happy with your product or your service in the first place. That's something that we definitely, I mean, we see that a lot in referrals. Unless your customers are happy, and they're willing to refer your product to their friends and family, but because they're happy with the product and because they like the product. It doesn't really matter what reward
Mhm.
structure you set up for them to incentivize them to refer if they're not happy in the first place. So I totally agree with that. In terms of retention, you mentioned something interesting about how it becomes more kind of more profitable to kind of focus on those customers that you're being retained. Have you guys seen any sort of like trends in the past few months on how companies are starting to retain customers more, or how companies that before maybe they weren't like there were some post purchase steps that maybe they were overlooking, now they're really focusing on?
Yeah, so I think there were there are additional layers that are now included into the post-purchase process, I would say. So I think at the beginning, the main, I would say, the best practice for doing post-purchase activities was basically generating reviews, right? So we saw a boom, I would say, starting of 2016 up until the last year, of just these product review solutions providing the ability to generate reviews. But I think this has become a standard, and now we see more and more brands just add more layers to the post-purchase funnel, which includes more elements. For example, if we take AfterShip as a post-purchase solution, or ReferralCandy as a post-purchase solution, right? So brands understand that there is so much more money to be made if, as you mentioned, the customer is satisfied, and then he can go in and refer and recommend the product to their friends, and basically what you get as a result is free traffic, right? It's brilliant. And I think, I think as e-commerce evolves, we are going to see an optimization on that side of the, user journey.
Absolutely. And so how have you guys seen or like what are probably the most successful post-purchase I would say steps, or kind of like maybe the most innovative post-purchase steps that you guys have seen that have helped brands build customer retention and also build trust? For example, something that we've
Mhm.
seen on our end is that a lot more companies right now are trying to connect with their customers in a deeper way. Can it kind of create like a more personal connection between the company, and not necessarily the products, but more like the company, the entity itself, and the reason why they are in business with their customers. Basically, because when you're launching a business, you're doing it with a purpose, and so there's a lot of companies that have understood that they share that purpose with their customer base, and so they are after the purchase, they're creating a lot of content that they're distributing with their customer base. That it's not promotional, that it's not meant to get these customers to come back right away with a coupon code, but more like educating these customers and kind of like sharing information that's useful for them. And in the long run, I mean, it's a really good way to stay top of mind, but in the long run, it helps build a much richer image of the company from the customer. So that's something that it's kind of like one example of post-purchase, I would say flow or post-purchase kind of campaign that we've seen that works really well when building retention, but also, I mean, building trust in general as a company. What have you guys seen on
Mhm.
on your end that has kind of come up in the past few months?
Yeah, so that's a great point, and I think for us it has been mainly been the rise of transparency of the process, and B, personalization, right? So what I mean by transparency is just to give the customer a sense of security when it comes to waiting for the parcel to arrive with their product, meaning that after the purchase has been made, the journey or the connection between the brand and the customer doesn't end there, right? So brands do that with providing transparency. One way we provide transparency is by sending automated notifications and updating the customers about the whereabouts, or when a status of an order changes, for example, from leaving the warehouse to in transit, then the customer will get a notification, and that way he has a sense of security. He always knows and where and when the parcel is going to arrive. And if you add to that layer of transparency and personalization, for example, if the brand is from North America, but the customer is, let's say, Greek, then you want to communicate with the customer in their language, right? So that's very important for making that bond. And I think that's something that, again, as e-commerce evolves, is something that on the post-purchase side and also something that is being established.
I think that's definitely the next. This is my own personal opinion, but I feel like um, kind of like innovative on the shipping process, it's definitely the next barrier for a lot of e-commerce brands. I mean, we saw the Shopify a few years ago. They announced the fulfillment network to allow a lot of merchants to kind of compete with Amazon on that 1 day, 2 day delivery. But there's a lot more that can be done, and that's one example that you just mentioned. Is the fact that you're delivering transparency. We're pretty much used to at this point of that we buy something online and then we just kind of hope that it will show up in the mail one of these days, and there's unless you actively and I'm the kind of person that's looking for the tracking code and like checking manually multiple times a day to see where my parcel is, but because a lot of brands are still not offering that and they're not giving you the transparency like, hey, it's on the way, and actually I think that not only builds transparency and I think it's in a way it kind of makes the brand kind of be accountable for it, in the sense that like, hey, we're just we just wanted to let you know the package on the way, like this is where it is right now, etc. Like even though it's a separate process, it's external to the actual company itself, I mean it's still part of the shipping process, I mean it's still part of the purchasing process, so it has to be the kind of the store has to be accountable for it.
Exactly.
And so I think, yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point in the sense of not only building transparency, but also you can build anticipation for the customer. Like, hey, it's on the way. You're gonna get your package in a few days.
Yeah, Raul. And by the way, you mentioned that you are checking the status of the order multiple times a day. I think that's a really good point, right? And I mentioned beforehand the opportunity that lies and the conversion that rate that is so much higher than for retention versus acquisition. So if a single customer checks his tracking page several times per day, per week until the parcel arrives, on a larger scale, imagine how much traffic you can send back to your website and just generate more opportunities for repeat purchases, right? So if I'm a brand, I don't want my customers to go to an external tracking page, if it's FedEx or DHL, and to check their order. I want them on my website. I want to recommend them more products on a branded tracking page that I designed for them and I personalize them. And this just raises so much more opportunity. And it's I would say basically money on the floor.
That's so interesting. So I'm actually curious now. What are examples of what merchants are doing to kind of like, because again, tracking pages are something that traditionally we've just looked for a tracking page online to paste our codes and see where our package is. But now that we have the opportunity, I mean, for brands have the opportunity to be able to create, I mean, put their own branding in those tracking pages. What are examples of like smart things or like really interesting things that merchants have done to kind of like maybe drive new sales from that, or like maybe add another step of the post-purchase funnel with those particular tracking pages?
Yeah, so actually the popularity of branded tracking pages really comes from the involvement of e-commerce and just trying to grab this, these low-hanging fruits or the missed opportunities. So, and it drives from the fact that really people are so excited and waiting for their parcel that they check their, tracking status multiple times a day. So if you redirect the traffic to your store in the form of a branded tracking page, then you get the opportunity, right? So some very interesting things brands have done are, for example, so the opportunity is to create strong brand awareness, right? So one thing brands are doing is embedding their Instagram page on the tracking page, right? So while you are looking at this, status of the order, you just get another feel of what the brand is and the people behind the brand, and just it brings you closer. You understand that there are people on the other side, and it's just another connection to the brand. And another thing that is popular right now is um, personalize, personalizing the products that you can recommend on the order tracking page, right? So, we, for example, have an integration with Nasto, which is a popular personalization solution, and we have the ability to show the customers uh, more products that they are probably interested in than just products out of the random collection, which has a tremendous impact we've seen.
I particularly like the first example that you mentioned because it's what we're talking about earlier about creating a deeper
Mm-hmm.
connection with your customer base. At the end of the day, it's like, and it goes in line with what you just mentioned about transparency. Not only transparency in the process, but also,
Mm-hmm.
hey, this is the people that fulfill your order and the people that came up with the products that you're about to enjoy. That's great. Those are great examples. And I mean, again, like you said, it's a low hanging fruit. It just makes a lot of sense for a lot of brands to think it's something like that. Let's before we go, let's dive into a little bit more about what brands can do to improve their post-purchase experience. We've already given a few ideas, I think, of what kind of like one of these low-hanging fruits are, and I think one particular or one important thing to keep in mind, in my opinion, it's always the fact that um, you already have your customers' attention. Like once they bought from you, they want to kind of keep this conversation open. They're probably now even more interested than before in hearing from you because I mean it has to do with what they have just bought. So and also they already know about you. They have already trusted you with their money. So the conversation it's a lot more direct, and I think a lot of brands are probably underutilizing the post purchase experience. So what are things that you would recommend brands to do to improve this experience after the customer has left the checkout?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So a few things. First of all, we already touched on a bit, is providing transparency and personalizing the experience. I think at the end of the day, just to sum it up, you want to give customers the feeling that you still care even after they purchase, right? I think that's the bottom line.
Yep.
And regardless of how you get there, this is the end goal. Rather, if you make sure you notify them about each and every step of where the package is, and if you ask them for feedback, it can be a variety of things, but that is the goal. Secondly, again, speaking from a shipping and fulfillment point of view, you have a great chance to reduce shipping related incidents, right? So if you keep track of all your orders, let's say you ship with multiple carriers, right? It gets very confusing, and you want to have one place where you can just monitor all the different statuses, all the different orders and their statuses. And once you have good control over your shipments, you can basically avoid shipping incidents before they happen, right? So let me give you an example. Let's say that you have a shipment that is delayed because of weather conditions, right? If you monitor that, you can just, avoid the customer connecting with your support and asking where their order is. In fact, I think for brands, about 30% of support tickets are related to shipping and specifically, where's my order? So if you see that and if you communicate the fact that the shipment is delayed before the customer does that, then you win a lot of points, right? And I think that's a great way to win trust. And another thing I can recommend is creating a seamless returns process, right? So we want to give customers the option to return or exchange products, because obviously you're not buying from a physical store. You don't always know if you like what you've seen, and it's just now in this day and age, it's just and again another part of the user experience, the user journey. It's just another part. So you wanna allow users to have a seamless self-service returns process, and allowing them just in the most convenient way to make that exchange or return. So I think that's another thing that I would want to recommend and point out.
Yeah, the return part, I think it's more important that what a lot of merchants realize, especially in the sense that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially with the pandemic, basically our bedrooms have become fitting rooms. So
Yeah,
a lot of brands
yeah.
have done really well. Those that just kind of encourage those easy returns, in the sense that they say, look, just try a bunch of them and then just keep those that you like. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is kind of like the idea behind, I think, Stitch Fix, I think it's called, at this subscription business, in which you get, I think you get a box with clothes every single month, and then you keep those that you like, then you return those that you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like this type of service. But the idea it's behind it is pretty much the same. It's like giving power to the user of like, hey, this is not a commitment. Just try it on, see if you like it, and you return that you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it'll be interesting to look into. Maybe that's something that we can send after the webinar. It's to see if there are any sort of studies after that show that stores that offer easy returns are, they have maybe higher, well, they're probably going to have higher order volume, but maybe in the long run they have a higher lifetime revenue from individual customers. That will be something interesting to look into after the webinar. And one thing that I would mention after the in terms of the post purchase, and kind of like following the trend that you were talking about in terms of transparency, and kind of like creating a connection with the customers. Again, we're talking about low hanging fruit in most of these cases. If you have a customer that already trusted you with their money, they're happy with their purchase, they're happy not only with the product but the overall purchasing experience, because they were being notified every single step. They were, the store was being transparent with them. Why wouldn't they recommend that store to a friend? And so adding that
Exactly.
at the very last step of the process, especially maybe sending a referral email after they have received the product, so they had time to kind of like try it on, and maybe the referral might be a lot richer that way, because they have already tried it, they know that they like the product, and then the referral will come out a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think if you kind of look at both our solutions, in the post-purchase world, I think a solution such as AfterShip is really responsible for getting a brand to that place where their customers are eventually that satisfied that they would either leave a review or refer their customers. So I think it's AfterShip is kind of a means to an end, which is ReferralCandy at the end of the day, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, yeah, they both fall under the umbrella of customer satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, without that, it wouldn't really work to do any sort of post purchase marketing. I mean, nobody is going to want to interact with a brand that give them a bad experience, or didn't enjoy the product that they bought. So it's all about getting to that point. And then after that, I mean, it's what I always say, like, referrals happen organically. It's just a matter of incentivizing them, and solutions like AfterShip, that kind of like get you to that point of customer satisfaction. It's what at the end of the day ends up generating natural referrals that you can then encourage with the program. Okay, I think we're pretty much hitting the hour here. So I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to maybe to raise or share with us before we go. By the way, we're going to share our email addresses at the end of the webinar. So if there's any follow-up questions, you can just reply to those emails directly. If you have any questions about either what we're discussing right now or about AfterShip or ReferralCandy, you can reach out to us directly. But Doron, I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to touch before we go.
No, I mean, I like the discussion. I think, as you mentioned, you're going to share our emails, and I invite everyone who's interested in continuing the discussion with me. I'm happy to engage in the conversation gladly anytime.
Sounds good. And yeah, same here. So thank you so much, Doron, for the all the knowledge that you've shared with us today. It's actually great. I mean, I think there's a lot of actionable kind of feedback and tips that merchants can put into practice that we have discussed today. So yeah, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you to everyone that showed up for the webinar today. Yeah, our email addresses are here, so any questions, we'll be more than happy to take them. So yeah, once again, thank you, Doron. Thanks everyone, and see you next time.
Bye bye.